Carberry Montgomery,
Here.
Kroll,
Here.
McBurney,
Here.
Rosendahl.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. A motion to approve the agenda. Oh, Pat, are you there?
Yes.
Oh, wonderful.
Okay, great, wonderful. All right, I'll ask for a motion to approve the agenda.
So, second.
Motion by Rosendahl, second by Carberry Montgomery. Discussion, roll call.
Rosendahl,
Yes.
Carberry Montgomery,
Yes.
Bodie,
Yes.
Kroll,
Yes.
McBurney.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. The first item is to discuss the educational public awareness plan for the new on-street bicycle pavement markings. And John, are you gonna start us off on this, or who's gonna start us off?
Yeah. Well, thank you, Mayor. Actually, Kristen Brostrom, the Assistant Director of Engineering, is going to take the lead to start us off here.
All right, thanks, John.
Good afternoon, everybody. Hopefully you can see my screen. We did send out the public education component of this out to you in the Friday packet to give you a kind of a quick look at it ahead of time, but wanted to get you up to speed on this component of our Complete Streets program and then get your feedback on our public outreach as we move to implement this. So just a quick recap, always likes to look back and see how we got where we are. The Complete Streets Master Plan was adopted in December 3rd, 2019. The goals, of course, are to promote bicycling and walking and develop guidelines to help implement that. There's a variety of tools to meet those goals. So it's kind of a toolbox of different features we're going to apply different places in town. Today, we're specifically focusing on the neighborhood bikeways component. So just a quick reminder of that toolbox. When we talk about on-street bike lanes, we can do a shared bike lane, we can do a buffered bike lane, get a little more space to the through lane. You can go as far as a fully protected bike lane that actually has a median or barrier there. We also do some off-street bike lanes, our typical shared use trail, our new separated bike lanes that we've implemented on Waterford, 170th Street, and Douglas Avenue. And then, of course, our already very robust trail system in our parks that connects to the rest of the metro. And then one more item in that toolbox is those neighborhood bikeways. And these are for areas where there really just isn't the right of way or the room to get like a full trail in. And so it helps guide bicyclists from one trail to the next, provide that connectivity through a neighborhood. So state law does allow bicycles to share lanes at all locations. So why would we specifically mark some streets for shared bike lanes? And there's a couple of reasons. One is for vehicles to remind them, you know what, there's going to be maybe some more bikers in this area as they are going from one trail to the next, reminds them that they can be on the street and will share the road. It helps provide wayfinding for the bicyclist to get that connectivity to the next trail section. And it also reminds the bicyclist that it's okay for them to use the whole lane. Particularly this can be in areas with a lot of storm sewer intakes or parked cars, remind them that it's okay to kind of move out toward the middle and get away from those, I don't want to say hazards, but those other obstacles that might be along the edge of the lane. Also encourages bicyclists to go ahead and use the street where the sidewalks might be narrow and there may be pedestrians already using those sidewalks. So there's a couple of tools. We use the manual for uniform traffic control devices, a nationwide manual for our signage and our paint markings. There's a number of tools already in that to use for signage and for pavement markings. The shared lane marking is often called a sharrow. It's an arrow to remind you that you're sharing the lane, and that's the image on the right that would be painted on the pavement itself in the street. So the locations that we're looking at to implement those neighborhood bikeways out of that Complete Streets Master Plan from 2019, the first location might actually is partially existing on Roseland Drive. We already have some signage. I don't think we have any paint markings down, but we've got some signage for the shared bike lane. We're actually going to hold off on implementing this entirely because we are reconstructing Roseland Drive and a little bit of Elm Drive next year in 2025 and 2026 as part of our storm sewer improvements. So this would be a location we certainly want to implement, but doesn't make much sense to paint it and then rip the road out or paint part of it that leads to a construction zone. So we thought it best to wait on that one. Mary Lynn and Aurora, we've got a number of trail connections. A lot of the purple you see on this map is actually, they're smaller sidewalks. This is the part of town where rear yard sidewalks was often used. So there is trail through Sunflower Park. There's trail up along the Greenbelt, and by painting sharrows on Mary Lynn and Aurora, this provides connectivity from those trails down to the new complete streets separated bike lane on Douglas Avenue. We've also got Colby Parkway from right outside our offices here up through 83rd Street. There is a light at 83rd Street. The Complete Streets original plan, I think, recommended crossing at 79th. We modified this slightly to move it to 83rd, where there is a stoplight to provide bicyclists with that comfort for crossing Douglas, and then continues up 82nd. We are reconstructing that south end of 82nd Street with the Douglas project. So this will probably wait to install these paint markings and signage until late fall after that work is done. Again, no point in us painting pavement that's about to get ripped out. And then from Patricia Drive to New York over to 86th Street, we've got a lovely trail section in Coronado Park and Dunlop Arboretum. This would provide some connection through that from that area through the neighborhood to 86th Street. Once you cross 86th Street, you can get on down to the North Walnut Creek Greenbelt. So those are the locations that from the Complete Streets plan we're looking at implementing this year. Looking at how to let people know about neighborhood bikeways, since we clearly do not have many existing in Urbandale, we worked with Derek to create some social media posts. He's got some really great information for those posts and some images he'll do, and he'll start doing those probably starting ahead of the installation, and then he's got about 9 of them to space out and get people's awareness and feedback. He'll also include notes on this in the monthly newsletter that goes out to residents. We have a couple of existing web pages for our Complete Streets program, as well as general traffic safety. For example, we've got a roundabout page. We've got a page about pavement markings. We will add components for the sharrows and the neighborhood bikeways to those pages. And then, of course, on the Parks Trail map, the Parks Trail map currently shows trails, and it shows sidewalks that are being used for trail connectivity. We will add a feature to that map showing those on-street bike lanes and providing that neighborhood bikeway connectivity. And then hopefully you all had a chance to kind of look over these from the packet on Friday. These are the social media posts that I think Derek did a great job putting together, letting people know about these sharrows and what they're for, why they're there. And so he's got 9 posts there to roll out over probably a month and a half, 2 months as we start to implement this. We've got some edits that we haven't hit publish yet, but some edits that we will add to the Completely Streets web pages and the traffic safety web pages, letting people know what these are, where they're going to be at, watch out for them, check them out. And then just some helpful information on the webpage about the different pavement markings. I think the pavement markings are fairly self-explanatory, but it's also nice to let people know what they're looking at. So again, that one on the left is specifically for the pavement lane, the traveled lane for on-street neighborhood bikeways. The one in the middle is for on-street bike lanes. So as we're looking at Aurora and 70th possibly for next year, that would be the kind of symbol that would be used for those on-street buffered bike lanes. And then the one on the right is for a separated bike lane like we currently have on Douglas and Waterford and 170th Street to designate the HMA portion, to let bikers know that they are encouraged to ride there. And then, again, as I mentioned, the bike trails map, we will get that updated to show those on-street connectivity between the different trail sections. So I know that was fast. I know we've got a lot of agenda items to get through today, so I wanted to move quickly, but we wanted to give you that update of what we have proposed for the neighborhood bikeways, and then again, ask for your feedback on that public outreach component and what else you might be looking for on that.
I'm going to apologize up front because I'm trying to join on my iPad, having troubles and not, wasn't able to totally pick up everything that you said, but are we, the area in front of the middle school, is that included? For some reason, I didn't see this in the attached, I didn't see what was sent out on Friday. So this is the first time looking at this.
The area in front of the middle school would be part of that future Complete Streets project that we're looking at for Aurora and 70th. That would be on-street bike lanes, which is different from the Sharrows where the bikes are actually sharing the lane with the cars. So that we'll discuss in front of the middle school. We'll discuss that in the future going forward with that CIP project.
Okay, so when did that change? I mean, I thought we've been trying to do that project for 2 years. And that is why we've been doing this.
We're doing that on a parallel path, Bridget, I guess is the best way to put it. This is just for the on-street things, and we are separately going to be doing a separate campaign for the Aurora and 70th projects. So this is just for the Sharrows and the true on-street, but we are working on a separate campaign that will come out ahead of the CIP for the other project.
This year?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, Bridget, we kind of met on that, and so that'll be sort of a plan that's getting unpacked here pretty quickly.
Okay.
And they've already started to talk to the school district about it, so we're making good progress there.
Okay, well, as long as you're looped in, because I think we share the same concerns about getting the neighborhood to understand what we're trying to do and, you know, safety and all that.
Right. So that was the comment I was going to make. Chris and Derek and everybody, I think this looks really, really good. Just 2 quick comments. I would say we should always, when we're talking about recreational health benefits, et cetera, always lead off with safety. Have safety be kind of first and foremost, and include pedestrians as well as bicyclists always. Even when we're talking about Sharrows, well, maybe it's a little hard when we're talking about Sharrows. Okay, fair enough. But the Sharrows that aren't just in the street, it's always good to mention the pedestrians, I would suggest. And the other thing was, you mentioned it in your presentation, and you know, because of the weekend I was involved in, I had to look at this relatively quickly, but I didn't see us emphasizing that bicyclists are legally allowed on every street. And I think that should get emphasized, because that's the downside of Sharrows, is that the public gets angry when once they've seen Sharrows and then you're on the street without Sharrows, especially if you're a slow cyclist like myself. You feel like you could get subjected to a level of road rage. So I would just make sure our public education system keeps that theme as well. They're allowed everywhere. This is for the benefit of you to be reminded and for the cyclists to find their way.
Yeah, we can definitely highlight that a little bit more, both on our web pages, and I'll mention to Derek. I know we had talked with Derek about that. It's like when people complain about it, that's a good response to remind them that they are absolutely allowed to be there. Yeah.
Yeah.
We will highlight that.
Yeah. So anyway, I thought this was good, and I'll shut up.
Can this be sent out again? I am not seeing it at all in my inbox.
So it was yes, we can send it out again. In the agenda that Nicole sent, there was a hyperlink to it, like we do the hyperlinks for the council letters and that sort of thing. So it wasn't a separate attachment. But yeah, we can absolutely send it out again. And I don't think the part I sent out at that time had the components for like the rest of the Complete Streets toolbox. So we can send that out.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, it's not showing up that way either as a hyperlink. So I don't know what's going on.
And I should mention, we have some other pavement markings, our annual routine pavement markings that we need to get done in the first few weeks. So it's going to be a couple of weeks here before we start rolling this out. So certainly if you've got additional comments after you look at that in the next couple of weeks, if you just want to get that over to us. And then I would think maybe like by the end of July, John, I think we'll start moving forward on this. So if we could get just feedback in the next couple of weeks, that'd be great.
And I did find it. Thank you.
Okay, it's a little bit buried, but
yeah, that is correct. As you can imagine, we do have a lot of different other pavement markings we need to do, so we do not have a set schedule on this. Just knowing you want to get it in yet this year. So yes, there is plenty of time for people to look at it and still provide us comments.
I would say one thing. We're not adding any signs, right? Because I know this is just the markings.
No, there will be some signs. Let me hop
Okay.
to that. So there'll be a couple of signs for bike routes, again, for that wayfinding for the bicyclists, and then there'll be a couple of the bicycles may use full lane. Again, as Pat noted, they're allowed to use a full lane anywhere, but I think reminding people of that helps prevent some of that frustration sometimes. Yeah.
And with those new signage, with the new signage, does that just go in, or because I've seen people like when new signs get added, like there's maybe like a flashing element to it, or they've got like the 2 red flags on the top to say, like, hey, by the way,
Sure.
this is new. And those obviously would be temporary, but.
We don't typically for this kind of signage. Sometimes, for new stop signs, flags could be used, but for this kind of signage, we would just post it and keep going.
Gotcha. Sounds good. And the only other thing I was thinking about is like all the information, like for the web pages and the newsletter and the social media. Love that. Have we thought about making like an info poster or something to like display at National Night Out or something, or like some of our bigger events, just to say like, by the way, people can ride on the roads.
Mm-hmm.
Here's some pavement. Like, it's not something that's like paragraphs and paragraphs of text, but something really quick. Like if somebody's walking by, they can see, oh, yeah, pavement markings. Okay.
Sure. Yeah, we can certainly look at that. I'm sure Derek could pull something together. Engineering does a table at Urbandale National Night Out, but that's actually for our stormwater resources to let people know about that grant program. I suppose we could roll it into that, but typically our focus on that is more stormwater. So I can talk to Derek and see if there'd be a better place to post it at Urbandale National Night Out or something like that. We can definitely look into that.
Awesome.
Thinking like party in the park might be a good spot too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Really anything where we're getting a lot of people all together.
Yeah.
I think that's a great idea. I'd like to see us do more and more of that because I think there's a lot of people, that's where they see things,
When will we get information regarding any public outreach with the Aurora side of this, since that's the piece that tends to be a little bit more hair-raising for folks?
Oh, we had met with Pat and the mayor and Curtis last week, the week before. I've lost track of my weeks on ways to start rolling out some public meetings to get some information out there and get some feedback from people. I don't think we've set dates for any of those, but we were talking if we're going to coordinate with the school, obviously once school starts, and then whether that first public meeting comes right before or right after that. So I think early fall was sort of what we were penciling in. I don't think we set any dates.
And is that going to be enough time before like CIP starts, or will this impact CIP at all?
It could impact the CIP depending on whether the project pivots a little bit, and it is a little bit tight in that schedule. But I think it gives us, if this is the path we want to go, particularly with working with the school, we almost have to wait until that timeline to reach out.
I think we can get it. I think that we had talked about we can get it done before the CIP, and that's the goal, obviously. But we had a lot of good ideas. You were on that subcommittee, but I think you were tied up with some other things last week.
Probably.
But I think the bottom line is we're trying to engage some students really early The mayor and AJ have met with the school district about that, and they've got some players that they think can work with us on this. And that will kind of help. And the theme that we're going to be working with is that safety improvement theme, and introducing people to complete streets with that as the driving theme, and then follow up with the specifics of the plan and get some feedback on that. It would be ideal in the future. We'll probably try and get more public engagement before design, but this time we need to kind of do it this way.
Got it.
Yeah. Does that make sense to everybody? Did I summarize that right, Kristen?
I am still going to struggle with supporting the Aurora project until that we have buy-in from people in the neighborhood and understanding that this is not going to ruin their lives, property values, et cetera. And I know we can make it happen, but again, I don't know that we have enough time before we start meeting in November. So I'm just throwing that out there, fingers crossed.
Yeah, well, that's what the education component's about, and that's why we're trying to engage the students and as well as the educators around it, so that it's not just us making that claim. But it is going to be challenging to get it done, but I think the pathway we're taking is about our best path.
So I have a question, and it relates to the topic that we're on, but it's not directly topic. Out here on the west side, we have a lot of bike paths, especially along Hickman, and within those bike paths, we have stop signs at basically every intersection for the bikes. From what I recall, are those stop signs enforceable at all? And the reason I ask is we have a lot of people who, in my neighborhood specifically, at Deerfield and everything, who complain about cyclists and not abiding by those little stop signs that are on the trail. I don't know if they're actually, I think it's more a suggestion than requirement.
That's a good question. Technically, I think bicyclists should stop at those streets. They should check for right-of-way. I don't believe those stop signs are typically recommended by the MUTCD. I think they're put more up to alert bicyclists that there is a crossing there. Whether or not you could write a ticket for a bicyclist not stopping, that could be a little tricky. I honestly don't know. I'd have to go back and look more carefully at. I don't think they're in our city code, so I think that could be tough.
I do know folks who have gotten ticketed for not stopping,
Really?
not necessarily in Urbandale.
I was going to say, is it in Urbandale? Yeah, because of course a lot of the trail in Hickman is not Urbandale.
Then if we could just, I don't know, if we're already putting information out there, maybe we can include it as one of the signs that bikers need to look out for, as well as, traditional vehicle traffic needs to look out for. Just because I know we have seen so many near misses. So,
Larry, this is AJ. I know when we had the reconstruction on Douglas, there was some discussion about, and we've changed out some of those signs as well. So if I remember correctly, and I get with Jan on this, that we were going to begin changing out all of our signs that didn't have a stop sign, but maybe had maybe a yield sign or something else that would indicate that, bicyclists, as Kristen said, bicyclists beware, you're coming to an intersection and that you have to yield to that oncoming traffic. But let me get back and find out, because I know the Douglas project really kind of started that, because we started looking around thinking, that we had those stop signs. And then the one individual we were dealing with on Douglas, we came up with a different sign. Remember that, Kristen? It was
Yep.
I can't think of the wording now, but driveway crossing or something like that to indicate that there was a blind driveway or something. Again, I'm searching here, but we were looking to redo the entire city to have a more uniform application of those signs or warning indicators. So we'll get back to you on that one.
Hey, this is Scott. Can you hear me?
There's Scott.
Mhm.
Yep. So we did convert all of those signs along Hickman, Meredith, Douglas, and I think Waterford too to yield signs on the bike paths. Unless there's a controlled intersection with a light, they should be yield signs along those. Now, we still have some stop signs along the bike paths, like crossing in Colby Woods that had been there. But we did convert, and that was to align with what our neighboring communities were doing along those roads as well too. So those should all be yield signs now. Larry, if you see a particular spot that's still a stop sign along the bike path, let me know, because we switched those out last year, actually.
Yeah, I'll double check, but I thought it was still on Hickman and 132nd or 133rd.
We'll confirm that, but unless there's a controlled intersection there with the stoplight, we should have switched all those last year to yield signs.
Okay.
And I'll just mention, like, from an engineering, thank you, Scott. From an engineering perspective, more is not more when it comes to signage. You can distract people from watching the road because they're looking at a sign. We did have that unique sign on Douglas. That was an exception. We try very hard to follow all the standard signage in METCD so that people, when they see the sign, they're like, oh, that, my brain says that's a sign I've seen before. I know what that's telling me. I don't have to read something new and special. So for like these Sharrows, there are quite a few signs that are going up. We did space that according to the METCD. We try not to put extra signs out beyond that standard guidance to help people focus on the road instead of on reading signs. So just as a general philosophy when it comes to signage, it can be tricky.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you that you guys are putting these out there, because I think folks need to be reminded that the roads are for all vehicles, including bicycles. So.
Absolutely. All right. Anything further on? Thanks, Kristen and John. Anything further? We've got a few things to get through before noon here, so let's get through. I don't want to cut off the discussion. But, item 3.2 then is to discuss the Meredith Drive preservation from 86 to 104.
And I'm going to take that one too. And again, I know that we are kind of crunched for time here. Let me move through this quickly. I will mention that Dustin Creech, one of our senior engineers, is also on the call today, and he is the project manager for this one. So this year, I don't have any street labels. There we go. So this year we are working on a patch and overlay from 104th Street West. Next year we have DOT funds to do a patch and overlay. I'm sorry, I'm kind of zooming in and out here, from 104th Street to 86th Street, including, again, as part of our complete streets plan, was the goal to put a shared use path or a wider sidewalk on the north side of Meredith Drive. We've got some interesting obstacles along here, which is certainly not unusual for cities that are trying to retrofit trails into existing arterials and existing neighborhoods. So there's a couple of locations that we'd like to highlight with you of obstacles on this trail, and to get some feedback from you on what you'd like to see. We've got a couple of options moving forward from a design perspective, and we'd like to get your perspective on that. So let's start with the big one. Right in the middle here, I was zooming in the wrong spot. Right in the middle here at 94th Place, we have got a lovely tree, a tree that is it's actually in the right-of-way. So theoretically, we would have the right to remove it. However, oops, I've overshot it. I'm sorry. This tree, way back when we widened this roadway, very much nobody wanted to touch the tree. Probably didn't want the tree disturbed. It is a lovely tree. And we put in this retaining wall to go around the tree. This is a 4-foot sidewalk coming around the wall. In order to get our full 10-foot shared width trail in here, there is absolutely no way to save this tree. We would be taking out the wall, taking out the tree, and basically going straight through. Our proposal would be to leave this section of 4-foot sidewalk where it is, and basically gap the trail at this location. if council would like us to look at extending the trail through here, we can certainly take that route as well. But we definitely wanted to bring that to your attention and get your feedback on that.
So this section would be untouched from the corner to that little, where it starts to do the little bend?
I think we have to double check the slopes. I think my goal would be just to leave this ramp, leave the sidewalk coming around, leave it, and then somewhere back in here, we'd start to widen it back out and pick up the 10-foot trail again going east. It would obviously be a pinch point. We'll talk in a minute about some other little pinch points along the trail, but this is definitely the severest one.
I would agree with keeping the tree as well. I think we would face significant, I mean, I know what that tree is. I know where that tree is just by the look of it. I think we would suffer some backlash if we removed it.
I agree. I think we just need to have, it'll be a pinch point. We just need to recognize that.
Well, and I think we should sign it or, paint something on the sidewalk or something that indicates trail narrow to save a tree. And I would indicate we were saving a tree when we did it. That'll get us a little further.
Yep.
Okay, one done. We will leave the tree. I am going to show you, I guess maybe let's look at this real quick. So just as an example, we've got, in most cases, a 4-foot sidewalk. Google Earth or Maps is kind of tough to look at. It kind of skews your view a little bit. But we're looking at putting a 10-foot trail in and then coming down to the back of curb. Our right-of-way, our width there to do that varies through the corridor, and it also the slopes vary through the corridor. So this would be the ideal cross-section. If everything is hunky-dory, the purple is the existing. Purple, you got a little existing sidewalk here. You come back with the 10-foot trail, you set it a foot off the right-of-way. You get a little bit steeper going to the back of curb because this flattens out, but not too bad. 6% is nothing. We go up to 10% fairly regularly. Easy peasy, doesn't that look lovely? Unfortunately, that does not work at a number of pinch points in the trail. For example, we've got a couple of spots near the west end where we've got street light poles. We've got a narrower section to begin with between the right-of-way and the back of curb. We've got street light poles next to the right-of-way. And poles are in a right-of-way. We could make them move. The question would be, where would they go? If the trail goes there, then the poles have to go between the trail and the back of curb, which is not great for cars. It gets really tight to the back of curb. Not great for us if we have to come through later and do paving or something. That pole is in the way. The 3-foot from the edge of trail to the back of curb gets tight for snow storage. In my mind, it gets kind of tight for a comfort level for bicyclists riding on the trail, and maybe some of you that are bikers can speak to that a little bit more. There definitely is not room to store all snow there. Now, that being said, I don't know how many bikers we get along there, when we've got big windrows of snow either. But the question for a situation like this is, are we okay with the 3 feet? Is this a situation where we'd rather narrow the trail down to, say, 8 feet and provide a little bit more of a grass buffer to the curb, both for the users of the trail and for snow storage? Or do we just leave it at 10 feet and keep going through with that narrower parking? And I think both would be an option. It's just, what do we want for the feel of this corridor as we go through there?
Since this is going to be going along where there's a lot of residences, this is an example of maybe the time to have a public outreach component before we nail down this plan and get their feedback on just that kind of thing. I mean, that'd be a great opportunity for them to provide some feedback. I really think this might be one of these times where if we don't say anything about putting in a trail, and then it just appears, or we could regret that. I don't know. I'd be curious to see what others think of that. It's just a thought.
I would agree with that. I think this is a pretty, I mean, do we have strong feelings that it needs to go one way or the other? And if not, this is an easy way to engage residents in having a voice in how this project comes about, particularly the landowners, more so than maybe the general audience.
I think my question then would be, if the landowners are weighing in on whether it's 8 or 10 feet, is that the question we are posing to them?
I'm saying that would just be one of the discussion points we could have. This is one of these times where I'm concerned about us. I mean, what involvement has anyone who's along this had? You're talking to somebody who's a little paranoid, because I was involved in the original interurban trail where and there was a sidewalk there, and no one knew that there was going to be a trail until they got construction stakes in the right of way in front of their homes. It was a debacle. So I just kind of want to be careful that we don't make that mistake here.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just saying, if we probably should be doing some level of public engagement around something like
Mm-hmm.
this. And if we are, this would be one of the discussion points to talk about, to find out their bias, either in favor of, bigger parking or the bigger trail.
Sure. Okay.
That's all the point I was making there, but it's occurring to me that that's a lot of residential stuff
Mm-hmm.
there. Are we crossing driveways and things like that with this, or?
There are a few driveways that we will be crossing, yes. Most residents do not have a driveway on Meredith. They back up to adjacent streets. We always do an outreach, send people letters, let them know the project's coming. Usually we do that in early spring once it's, of course, already out to bid. This does have DOT funds, which means we actually need to turn in our check plans, our middle set of plans to the DOT next week. Final plans are due in September. So if we have an intensive outreach where we are looking for the public to help design this, I think that could slide. And then we'd have to decide whether we want to see if we can push it back an entire year, because I do not think we get good bid prices. The September submittal date is for a January letting, which I do think gives us the best prices for the letting. So we can maybe slide it a month, but you slide it much more than that, and I think we are looking at price issues. I think there's also, this is also part of our implementation of that Complete Streets plan that has, says that this is what we want on that north side there. So that's why I asked the question, are we just going to them with 8 or 10 feet? Is that what we're looking for feedback? Or are we looking to revisit components of the Complete Streets plan for whether staff should be moving forward on those?
Well, I think there's got to be a certain component, especially if it's going to be crossing some driveways and people are going to have questions about snow removal on the trail. Who's responsible? That's a public education component that I think we could get a lot of pushback if we haven't communicated effectively prior, and that's my concern. Is just, and I appreciate your point about the schedule. That's an excellent point, mm-hmm. and certainly the January letting is going to save a lot of money.
I hope so.
So again, it's one of these things where, boy, I wish 6 months ago we could have had some communication with folks along this stretch. I feel like I haven't been Johnny on the spot on that.
Well, and I guess big picture too, the thing about Complete Streets is to serve all the users traveling through the corridor. And unfortunately, I hate to say it, a lot of people don't want a trail in their backyard, even if it's public right of way, even if it's along an arterial. But the goal of the Complete Streets plan was still to provide that connectivity for the other users of Urbandale that want to come through there. So Again, are we a public education component to let people know, hey, this is coming. Let us know what questions you have, and we can answer it about snow storage, about, we restore things after this project. We will not close the project until your property is restored properly. We have a person on site. We answer a lot of those questions regularly about upcoming projects, and we can certainly accelerate that, do that earlier in the year rather than say January. We could do it in the fall and say, hey, by the way, this is coming next spring, give people more of a heads up. If we're actually looking for design input on the project, I think that creates a little different timeline.
Gotcha.
I would just want to remind everyone, and I am in no way saying I am not supportive of Complete Streets, but none of us, except for Bob, were on the council when this plan was approved. So I don't think any of us, other than Pat, who is a community member, have a real good understanding of where all these different components are. So I think when stuff comes to us, we need to be flagged. And I think from this council, you're going to never be in trouble for over communicating and over involving the public. And so this is a situation like on Aurora where I'm feeling a little bit blindsided that we're being asked to approve something where we think we need to get input. And I don't know what to say. Pat understands this more than any of us. I will defer to her on this, but I am, again, frustrated that we're put in this situation again, because I still don't feel like in where we're retrofitting for Complete Streets, I still don't feel like I really have any ownership of that plan. Yes, it was given to me, but that is about it. So I'm not saying we shouldn't be doing it, but we have to be educating people along the way, and we're going to run into problems with snow removal. I mean, the woman's still complaining up on Waterford about treatment, getting different treatment than other people. So just expressing my frustration right now, but I know we need to move on to other topics.
Well, Kristen, can I ask you a quick question? If, for example, we say we want it 10 feet and there's 3 feet, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we do the public education piece,
Mm-hmm.
and say October, we hear from them that, gee, we really don't want to have snow on this trail. We'd rather it be 8 feet. Would it be too late to make any changes at that point?
Definitely. In October, it'll be too late. The plans will be with the DOT. Now, if you want to wait and get that, we can. I just want you to understand the implications of going that route. That there will be a delay to the project. It was called out in the CIP as a 10-foot trail, and so we implemented what was given to us in the CIP. Now we're looking at, are there some areas that you want to do a design exception and provide a little more of a buffer, or do you want to stick with what the CIP plan was and take the 10 feet through?
Kristen, how many instances of this kind of situation are we looking at through the trail? Are we just talking one spot, or are there?
That's a good question. It's not. Let me see. Let me flip to my map. Okay, so this is I don't know if you can see this very well. Let me switch back to the big map. At the west end here is fairly tight right away. So I'm at 104th Street here. From 104th Street up to about here the poles move. And so we can get the sidewalk or the trail or whatever you want to call it over just a little bit, and it's a little bit better. So from about 104th Street to 100th Street is where it's a little bit tight. It also gets tight, and I can show you another cross-section on that, where the culvert is. And we always knew that culvert would be an issue. Originally, we were planning to just neck down to 8 foot there. But let me see. So the culvert, If we put 2 foot on, we put a fence in, we put 2 feet in to give a little buffer to the fence. It gives us 3 feet on the outside. We can fit it in. It's tight. This might be a location where we'd like to narrow it up to 8 feet. Again, give bicyclists just a little bit more buffer to the trail or to the back of curb. And I think either will work. Either will work functionally for bikers and for pedestrians. I know there's traffic out there, but we were talking today, I don't think it's terribly common that you're going to like pass a biker. So there should be room for a pedestrian and a bicyclist pass on an 8-foot trail fairly comfortably. It's just kind of a matter from a city perspective. And I guess one more point, the sidewalk already veers here to go around the culvert. So if this was an area where we're kind of narrowing down to 8 feet, visually it won't look all that crazy because it's already in a transition area anyway. So I don't know if there's really an aesthetic argument to go one way or the other. The other issue, I guess, I know we're pressed for time, so I want to make sure we hit the other issue. We've got a couple of locations where the existing parking slope, the existing slope from the sidewalk to the curb is already pretty steep. It's steeper than our usual 10%. And then, of course, the sidewalk's flatter. When you put a trail in and get it flatter yet, we eat up even more space. So we've got a couple areas that to get in our standard 10% slope, to get in our 10-foot trail, we're dropping a couple of feet at the property line, which means that we're chasing grade. We'd be chasing grade up into people's yards, 20, 30, sometimes larger, which is not ideal. We also have a utility easement behind the right-of-way, which means that we'd be paying utilities to move in that area if we have a great deal of cut. I guess my last item of discussion would be this. We would like to propose a wall along here. We've often done that on other trails. We've got along Meredith. We've got a little bit along 142nd. We feel that putting a wall in, it might be a little expensive, but it's better than trying to cut people's backyards down and get into that. And there's also a lot of fences along here. So we wanted to bring that to you, just get your blessing on that to proceed with putting a wall in those areas and limiting the impact to people's backyards. I think if you're talking about public outreach, Pat, people are not happy when they find out you're cutting out half of their backyard, for sure.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I just think this is a prime example of a project that needs public outreach before the design is landed on. There are just enough questions here, and at a minimum, anybody who's got a driveway that's being crossed by this needs to be communicated with. And yes, if you're going to now put a wall at the edge of somebody's backyard, yeah, that might be in our right of way, not theirs. But I'm betting there's going to be garden beds ripped out, or you know what I mean. It's just I feel like we're putting the cart before the horse here. I'm so sorry, because I understand what you're talking about with respect to the timelines. I regret this happening. I'm just wondering if it's possible to have a public engagement in August, or some level of postcard or communication around this with the time we do have, so that we can at least call out those folks who are concerned and have some communication with them that could possibly be more effective than waiting until spring. Last thing we need is somebody who's just spent a fortune having their driveway replaced, and then we go rip it up. That's how these things blow up on us.
Sure. I think there are only 3 properties with driveways. It's the Apple Orchard, and then there are 2 residences just west of North Walnut Creek that have driveways. I think it's only those 3. Technically, the Apple Orchard has 2 entrances, I guess, but yeah.
Well, maybe the middle ground here is to look at those driveways and look to see if any of those properties where you're thinking about needing to put up a wall or do some, back up past our right of way, if any of those properties have gardens or something like that at the edge,
We have looked at that. Yeah, that's part of the reason why we're proposing the wall, is to avoid those impacts into people's properties. For the ones that do have gardens along there, we would need to reach out to them for a temporary construction easement if we cannot fit it in the right of way. So we routinely have those discussions with property owners, and sometimes it is a question of, do you want a short wall here, or do you want to give us the easement? We can smooth it out, and sometimes we've got some flexibility there to work with the property owner. Those locations I was mentioning, I don't think there's any way to do it. I think we need to put a wall in there to limit the impact to those people's property. Yeah.
And to hit on what you'd said earlier, remember these are PUEs, so if we were going to grade, we have to pay to move the utilities, so we would use a wall regardless. I mean, we can't afford to move every utility that might be in the way there.
Yeah, I get it.
And I don't think the driveway crossings will not be a problem, and typically they get a full new approach out of it. So in general, people usually aren't too concerned about their driveway. We'll certainly work with the apple orchard to only close one driveway at a time so they don't lose access. And like I said, they usually get a brand new, approach and a couple of feet behind the sidewalk. So I never say never, but in general, new driveway crossings are not a huge concern for residents.
And you're saying that you're comfortable with designing this and then going to these individual owners afterwards?
Well, for most of these people, we don't need to go to the owner. We are in the right of way, and we're trying to limit our impacts to be on private property. Right. So we go to and say, hey, we're coming through the trail. You're going to get a brand new approach. We're going to have an inspector on site that works with you during construction. If you've got any concerns, we will check in with you on the timeline on when this work will actually be done. Make sure that works for you. And we coordinate heavily with property owners during the construction process, before the construction and during. Aurora Avenue, we replaced I don't know how many driveways and coordinated with everybody on those.
How many total properties or property owners?
Amy, I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt, but we've got 4 minutes here before noon, and I know Bridget has to join on the dart. Can we at least suspend this right now and talk about the search, the RFP, the RFP search process, and just make sure we're all on board on the draft, and if there are any further comments, we can get that out. That was the main reason we wanted to start early.
I gave my comments and had a good discussion with Aaron yesterday afternoon, and got a handle on the schedule for those of us reviewing the RFP. I'm content with what I read, and after talking to Aaron, I want to make sure that the struggles that she was frustrated with the fire chief process and not getting the assistance from the consultants that she was expecting for the money that we spent. I want to make sure that those we've kind of written into the contract or the RFP, and she feels like we have. So I'm okay with it, but I do have to go, and I will just say I'm super frustrated with this bike trail complete streets process, but I got to run. So I'm sorry, but we've got to figure out a way to communicate better on the front end. That's just how we operate now. So thank you.
All right. So AJ, I don't think we need to have we didn't have on the agenda a formal vote for Aaron, a formal vote on the RFP. I think we're good to go then, as you've gotten everybody's input. We need to get this published, right? You're muted. Aaron, you're muted there.
I think we're okay unless you saw any other issues.
Me?
There
we go. Now we can hear.
Oh, weird. I wasn't muted. I just unplugged and plugged back in. Okay. I did get feedback from a few folks, and I've incorporated just some really minor changes to verbiage, not really changing anything material in the RFP. So if there are any final recommendations, we can adjust those today. Regarding the timeline, I know a few of you have pointed out it is really ambitious, but if we publish tomorrow, consultants will have until the 4th of August to submit their proposals, so a few weeks. And at the last council meeting, Mayor Bob mentioned he'd like AJ, myself, and then council members Kroll and Carberry Montgomery to be on that firm selection committee. We will collate all the proposals that come in by the 4th and get those out to that committee on Monday, August 5th. Then we will all have the 6th and 7th to review and rate those. Then we will collate those ratings and send them out by Friday the 9th. And then if we could schedule a meeting now to happen on that Monday the 12th, we will review those ratings collectively as a group and then identify a firm to recommend to council, which will be soft proposed at the lunch and learn the next day on the 13th and would ultimately go before the council for consideration on August 20th. Bridget had mentioned to me her schedule is pretty wide open on the 12th. If you guys have the capacity, Bob and Amy and AJ too, to look at your schedules, does 10 o'clock work for everyone that day?
I have a board meeting from noon to probably 1:30, so 11:30 to 1:30 is pretty much out for me that day.
On which day?
August 12th.
It's a Monday.
But I'm open the rest of the day.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a 10:30 meeting that day, but open otherwise.
Okay. How about 9 o'clock?
My calendar's clean too, Aaron.
Totally clean, AJ. Okay. I will go ahead and send that for 9, and if we need to adjust, we can. But as long as we get something tentatively on our calendars now to block aside that time to make sure that we have the ability to meet prior to the lunch and learn on the 13th, that would be great.
Is that going to be long enough? Just an hour? Or...
I think so. By that time, the bulk of the work is really those work days for everyone, the 6th and the 7th, going through what could be potentially, a dozen 20 to 40-page proposals, depending how thorough they are, and taking the time to review and to rate those. And then I will average those scores, send them out by the 9th. And then from there, we can kind of look at those top 3, top 5, and really dissect collectively as a group a comfort level with one of them. So it should, by that point, hopefully be a pretty succinct conversation.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Aaron. Thanks, AJ. Do we want to tackle is there anything more on the event sponsorship and participation policy that we need to discuss?
I can chime in really fast there. The only changes that were made, this went to audit committee last week, and I incorporated the 3 minor changes that were brought in. As far as this base policy, we had a slight change in the amount and clarified the wording around the permit process and if they waive that, if that's part of the fee or the maximum award, and then changed for a capital campaign request to be in a regional area instead of saying immediate metro. Those were the main pieces that were discussed as far as changes that were recommended. So other than that, no changes. We do know that this policy will come back once we have clarified city use of assets policy, that those two will be merged together. But at this time, this one can stand as is. We do have our first request that will be coming to you on the July 16th council meeting. So that is why we wanted to go ahead and see if we can get the policy done, passed, so that we're ready to bring that forward at the next council meeting.
Okay.
As that audit committee already reviewed it.
And quick question on that. So it looked like the event planning portion, there was the prerequisite that they come through the standard hotel motel allocation.
Yes.
The capital campaign portion does not require them to go through that process first, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Because normally, we don't know. We don't know. We just wanted an opportunity for it to be in this bucket, as well as this makes it eligible for if they're Bravo entities, which they have to go through that or show that they aren't, and that is the nature of the next one that we've got coming up.
Mm-hmm. With the event planning one, what was the rationale for saying they had to go through the standard and basically be rejected through that first?
Mostly because there is a larger pool of money available through that process, and we want them to have a chance to not be first come, first serve is what this isn't going to end up being. So otherwise, I'm afraid we will be bombarded or spend all the, we only allocated $50,000 to do this, which covers both sponsorships and capital campaigns. But if there was an event that just didn't fit in the timing of that, or just didn't quite meet what it was, it's, a different category, it's a for-profit, whatever the case may be, we just have nothing on the books allowing us to even consider those at this time. So this is where it kind of came through. I want you to still go through the process so it can be vetted through the budget as compared to all of the other ones. And there's a bigger pool of money. So we don't want people to just, oh, whoops, I missed that deadline, but you should have hit that deadline, as well as like sports organizations and stuff. They're not allowed to do this piece. So we want to still have both opportunities, but we don't want them to avoid it just because they missed the deadline.
Gotcha. Thanks for that clarification.
Yep. Any other questions or concerns about this one? Yep.
Anything?
That's all I have.
All right, thanks, Nikki. And Kristen, I apologize if I cut you off there on the Meredith project. Is there anything further you want to add? I was going to try to visit offline on this as well with Amy and Pat, see if they had further thoughts. But did you have anything further you wanted to discuss?
No, I don't think so. Yeah, if we could just get some feedback on which direction the council would like to go, that'd be great.
Let's, yeah, I'm going to, Pat and Amy and I are going to just visit a little bit, try to get some consensus on that. So, if that works.
I did have
All right.
one question about the snow stuff. Is the snow removal on that trail right now property owner required, or is that city? And with this trail project, would that shift burden?
So it's a 4-foot sidewalk now, and that responsibility is on the property owner. Similar to like our discussions on Waterford, the snow removal would still belong to the property owner. Typically, we just require a 5-foot path to be plowed. We don't require the entire 10 feet or 8 feet to be removed. And really, we do it on like a complaint basis. So it's not like we're going around patrolling for sidewalks and looking for ones that haven't been plowed. If someone calls in and say, hey, this doesn't get plowed, usually Tim Stovey or someone from Public Works gives them a call or stops by and says, hey, don't forget, you got to plow that. So it's still theirs, but really it's about the same as what they're shoveling now.
Awesome. Thanks for that clarification. That's all I got, Bob.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Nikki says we need to adopt the event policy and we need a motion to do that.
Otherwise, it's just if you put it on the 7/16, I just need to have it be an adoption item prior to entertaining the application that we've got. So if you were comfortable with it, since audit committee had already reviewed it, if we're okay to adopt today, you can do that, but it actually does need to be a motion to approve or adopt it.
We didn't show it as an action item on our agenda. That's my concern.
Nicole, I was thinking you said we could
I think you can still take action on it, but
otherwise we can put it on. I just need to make sure it's in the right order.
I just going to say, why don't we put it on right before the gentleman from the Living History Farm shows up? Probably be the easiest way.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, I prefer then we have, just in case, we have the full council then as well on that. So let's do that.
Will do.
All right.
Okay.
Anything else for the good of the order? If not, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.